Let it be known that the ancient knowledge passed down in the tradition of the Holy Kabbalah, obtained through the mysteries delved into by a long lineage of sages and holy wise men, is the knowledge and substance from which all our ideas and sciences are built upon. All knowledge is of one essence, and for it to remain in truth, it must remain connected to a unified source. In the beginning there was nothing, Ayin. All was chaos and desolation. Yet this void was filled with the divine, limitless being, Ein Sof. As the primal elements in the yesternight, the night before time, before order existed in the universe. This yesternight was called the Emesh. The word Emesh is made of 3 letters, which are formulaic talismans for the principal forces in the antimatter, that substance from which the universe was created. Aleph is the air of consciousness. Mem is the fluid substance from which creation came forth. And Shin is the primordial fire, that from which light and life was motivated. It is said the limitless being, Ein Sof, alone with itself in the endless proto-universe, breathed in and was inspired in a great vision. And within this vision the limitless being gained the power of will, symbolized by the letter Yod, the first letter in the divine name. From this idea, the limitless being breathed out in the act of creation, symbolized by the letter He, the second letter in the divine name. This breath of creation opened out a perfect sphere within the uniform chaos of elements, a sphere filled with a vacuum of space. And within this space the divine being listened to itself in its ineffable silence, beholding its sentience. Then into this sphere, on an inward breath, a wave in the process of creation, Ein Sof injected a thread of light, the holy Ein Sof Or, the limitless light of the divine being. Within this thread of light was contained all the information and knowledge for the design and evolution of the unfolding universe and all beings within it, like a cosmic genetic strain. This included the template of humanity and the angels who were placed to guide creation along the divine being's path of configuration. Thus the angels are the divine being's thoughts that fly upon his breaths. They are creative intelligences, the holy presences that have form and function, which they bestow upon the unfolding pattern of the creation of all things. The knowledge of the formation of the universe contained within the atmosphere of the thread of light is symbolized by the letter Vav, the third letter in the divine name. This atmospheric construct was the air and scent of the divine being. The thread of light was held in place by the Chokmah, wisdom, and Binah, understanding of the divine being. Within this thread of knowledgeable light were the 7 lower sephirot of the tree of life in a line, suspended below and yet emerging from each other. This process contained within the 7-fold construct of formation is called the 7 days of creation, which are poetically expressed in magical allegory in Bereshit, Genesis chapter 1. However, as the light of the divine being poured into the sphere from the unmanifest universe, the ray intensified in brightness and exploded. This was the first motivating principle for change amidst the uniformity of the proto-universe and its active creation and manifestation. It is symbolized by the second letter He in the divine name, just as the divine being creates from a motivating epiphany into a gestating sentient space and a designed principle. So do human beings in their magic create in such a manner. In this mathematical construct of initial creation, it is told in the Shvirat HaKelim, the rendition of the breaking of the vessels, that from this initial explosion, sparks of holy light were hurled into the vacuum and suspended there. These sparks of divine light each held an angel attached to them, and as they fell away from the central pillar of creation, they darkened. Cold and seemingly abandoned, they became the Klipot, the demons, the unclaimed creative intelligences, and the necessary severance that veiled the divine being from its creations to create the multitudinous universe and the momentum behind the fall. For as the divine being poured his light inwards, it cascaded through the filters or layers called the Sephirot, which gave the appearance of diminishing. This delusion is the reason behind the fall that seemingly cleft the universe from the divine being's unity, and for the fall of the soul from grace. After the explosion, the divine being rearranged the Sephirot into 3 pillars, designated by the 3 elements from the Emesh. The divine being brought order to the expanding universe beneath his Keter, unity, Chokmah, wisdom, and Binah, understanding. The 3 Sephirot of the supernal and uppermost realm of the tree of life. From such wisdom and understanding, Ein Sof inserted the ability to give as well as to receive. In this giving, the Sephirot formed into the holy geometric called the tree of life, Etz HaChaim, the metaphysical, linguistic, and mathematical construct at the core of the Holy Kabbalah. Thus the power of giving was what brought forth creation into the living universe. And so the universal genetic imprint as a ray of light and mathematical construct was set. From it the universe unfolded according to the principles contained within the divine name, the Holy Word, Yod He Vav He, the Tetragrammaton, the formula for creation from nothing, and the conscious experience of the limitless being, Ein Sof. The universe settled in places where systems, planets, and life formed, and on one particular world, amidst a multitude of living things, a species developed that began to show a creative intelligence in the likeness of the divine being. This species was called Adam, humanity. This mythic tale of ancient physics and the science observed through the millennia of contemplating sages, whose da'at, knowledge, was gathered and passed on from mouth to ear, is the essence of the Holy Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is indeed a map of the path of light cascading through the layers of existence, and is described in words, mathematics, geometry, allegories, metaphors, and symbolism. Like all primal patterns, it is rippled through all things and indeed through the depth of the soul. In Genesis it says, Elohim hovered within the countenance of the deep, or the core of the soul, the neshama. And from our most meditative consciousness, in the void of selfless feeling, beyond the mind comes Bria, creation, an eternal watery flow of sentient intelligence that compels one to shape the universe according to one's inspiration, just as the divine being created its universe. In magic, the process of creating something from nothing in a ritual format, we mirror the divine creation through casting a circle. In this, we ritually clear a space where we may perform our magic according to divine formulas, to invoke and evoke spirits into living presence, where they may manifest and be molded by our intentions into living reality. Spirits are patterns of energy ordered by their frequency. They are the sounds or words of the divine being that cause all things to manifest, from solid objects to their movements and history. Spirits sublimate all things. These may be physical or spiritual, such as calling to manifest within the soul the divine qualities of the angels as creative intelligences, as virtues, or the gods or spirits of nature, which can allow us to expand and refine ourselves as the most elegant, functional, and eloquent beings. In format, spirits all have a formulaic mathematical symbol expressed in sound and frequency, like the elements in chaos theory. These sounds or utterances are the mantras and spells utilized in magical practice. The soul is hurled within the momentum of the creation into the fall, manifesting into the universe where it incarnates and reincarnates to gather the pages of its book, its cosmic story. Within each life, each chapter of a soul's story, some wisdom and understanding is gathered, some subtle vision and intelligence is beheld, and therefore some stable connection to the divine being is experienced, and some unity attained to. Humanity in history follows the exact same waveform, rising in its glory and sinking into its demise, being reborn from itself again and again. At some point in this journey, we become aware of the divine being in ourselves and in the world as the Shekhinah. God is in all things in this universe as the Shekhinah, a luminous, scintillating, angelic presence that glows with the intelligence innate within all things. The scientific perfection of nature unfolds in a vision of brilliance as we ponder the depth of the patterns of creation within it. It is written that the fruit of knowing, Peri Shel Dat, was given by the serpent first to Eve, and then she gave it to Adam. This is an allegory for the evolution of knowledge passed down from mouth to ear, along the ancestral lines of humanity in its progressive stages. In the primal stages of early development, humanity learnt from and came to deify the spirits of nature, the places upon the earth, the plants, and the animals. This first spiritual awakening was personified by shamanism. Shamanism is signified by the ability to enter trance and commune with the spirits of nature for their wisdom and blessing, their powers and magic. It is believed that shamans first entered trance through the ingestion of holy plants, teacher plants, such as the sacred mushroom. This inspired a creative blossoming which led people to discover art and music, particularly the drum, a major component in human transformational development. Rhythm set up a frequency in the brain that allowed people to enter trance more readily, and this developed into the expression of dance, song, and ceremony. The sensual ability to enter upon and interact with the spirit world in trance was signified by the serpent. Thus, the old Paleolithic cultures were the people of the serpent. The people of the serpent, which first held the fruit of knowing, were signified by the original shamanic knowledge of ancient peoples, still observed in some indigenous communities even today. The serpent era was the first sensual, spiritual knowledge that allowed people to become aware of and interact with the spirits of nature, in a time when early humanity came to develop its mastery over the natural world and become great and efficient hunters. The serpent sensual and powerful, sleek of form yet deadly to the bite, inspired humanity to overcome fear through developing respect. Thus, by turning fear into reverence towards all things in nature, humanity could learn from the animals and plants. Indeed, the serpent, a slithering spinal column, is a biological blueprint for all vertebrates and was recognized as this by ancient peoples. The people of the serpent might be described as primal animists and the first to pass on knowledge in unbroken traditions, like the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, the people of the rainbow serpent, who passed on their knowledge and stories, songs and dances for over 60,000 years through the age of megafauna until today. Indeed, until early humanity learned to master its life, it lived like the animals in a state of perpetual fear, bound only by their instincts, living in the eternal hunt. The serpent power guided humanity to learn to be in a sensual awe of all things, and soon the power of creation was seen everywhere, in the patterns of bark, in the eddies within the water, in the motions of the wind, in the rhythms of nature, its tides, seasons, and migrations. In the era of the serpent, humanity first observed the soul in birth, life, and death. It developed rituals around the shaman song and dance, the first funerals and ceremonies. The serpent on the tree of knowledge is the symbol of the primordial, sensual, spiritual state of knowing that taught people how to live. And as people learnt how to live, they mastered Etz Chaim, the tree of life, the mode through which a soul creates itself into the world along the paths of holiness. The word Eve means literally that which is with life. The awareness of the creative spirit in all things upon the earth culminated in the deification of the earth and nature as the Holy Mother Goddess, Gaia, the Shekhinah, as the universal creative principle and the primal unified presence of nature. It was a period in which humanity became aware of and began working with their nefesh, their astral body, and understanding its creative potential as a society. From this awareness, they first created communal rituals. The first communal rituals were developed in the time of Eve, in what science calls the Neolithic era, with its associated transitional periods either side. The fruit of knowing, then, inspired the advent of a sentient awareness of the soul. From this creative explosion came initiation ceremonies at significant points of growth: art, navigation, songlines, tool use, early symbolism, agriculture and plant cultivation, architecture and community, and at some point, the great mystery of the manipulation of stone for complex ritual invocations towards the benefit and transformation of a conscious communal soul through the observation of astronomical phenomena. Through many trials and catastrophes, Eve, what we might call artistic humanity, was forced to survive the primal world, and on the precipice of annihilation, she gave the fruit to Adam, who became the next phase of humanity from the Titan clans of old. The era of Adam was signified by a movement from the one earthly mother goddess to the worship of many gods, the multifaceted archetypes of evolving human form associated with the planets. Thus, the age of Adam was an age of astronomy, astrology, the advent of priestcraft, social engineering, architecture on a massive scale, kingship, technological advancement, and domination. This era of Adam stretched to this day and is what created the modern world. When the fruit and the knowledge with it was given to Adam, humanity was cast out of the natural paradise. In all its wildness and oneness with nature, and into the rising Neolithic realm of humble villages, which eventually rose into the advent of the city-state. Humanity began to dominate nature and each other. Humanity, in essence, was removed from nature and began to shape its own destiny and discover its unique soul. This process, where the ancient knowledge was passed on to entire communities, is told in stories all around the world, using localized symbols, wisdom and understanding, and the ritual places that were set up for such transformations. The places where the story was told and the vision medicine administered was acknowledged by standing stones, mounds, graves of great chieftains, dolmens, stone circles, and pyramids. But as far as we know, this event began historically at a temple complex built by hunter-gatherers called Göbekli Tepe in eastern Turkey over 10,000 years ago. At this incredible temple complex, in which it has been discovered, the astronomical process of precession was mapped for over 1,000 years. Nomadic peoples were initiated through the rituals of death, intermingling of the tribes in marriage, and through ceremonies which involved the ingestion of fermented grains, beer, and most likely mind-expanding substances. Similar rituals were conducted in the gatherings of indigenous clans right up into this era. The knowledge of Eve being passed to Adam, which included that of early agriculture, caused a massive creative awakening which exploded, breaking the vessels of the human capacity, the Sephirot, and from it the first cities were built, first of wood, then of clay, and then of stone. This process of passing on the fruit of knowing continued through the ages all the way to the Abgal priests of the Sumerian Anunnaki, who, as it is written, spread the pyramid technology and the right of kingship around the globe. This process refined and continued somewhat with the spread of occult orders like that of the Phoenician traders, 1500 BC, pyramid-based civilizations, Hebrew Sephardic communities, the Templars, and other mystical orders of knights, certain noble secret societies, the Rosicrucians and Freemasons, to the current occult orders, mystical schools, and schools of Kabbalah. Although out of necessity the culture of Eve may have passed on the fruit to Adam, when Adamic humanity dominated the older race of Eve, the fruit was not passed on. The knowledge and life of the Spirit was kept hidden, and the dominating culture dwelt in soulless ignorance. This has been shown in the earthbound indigenous peoples of the world who have been displaced with this change and had their land stolen from them and their cultures decimated. Indigenous people the world over have been cast out of their Edens and into Adam's turmoil. However, into that space in nature, the thread of Adamic light was injected, which caused a great explosion and a tear in the souls of indigenous societies through which they struggle to adapt. For it is told in Genesis that Adam was cast out to toil the earth and Eve to struggle in childbirth, while the serpent lunged for their ankles. As Adam, humanity came to know of itself as of the gods, the great force of human creative technology was unleashed. And when the great amalgamated wisdom of Eve and the serpent was not included, corruption was sure to embed itself in, and the demons of ignorance to rule over souls, just like the original patterns of creation. Humanity is cast out of its Eden and barred from the tree of life, the immortal living soul. Still in each phase of human evolution, along the line of ancestors, we have come to recognize ourselves and grow. In each phase, we have come to find and embrace those demons left in the void, and through compassion bring their light back into the fold. Thus the soul is born again and again to find and rectify its demons, to expand and evolve into its angelic creative intelligence. This process of adjusting the soul back towards the unity of the divine being is called tikkunim, corrections or rectifications. It is the karma yoga of the Kabbalah. This continual rectification of the soul towards its messianic perfection is the path upon which the tzaddik, the Kabbalah mystic, travels, ever extracting the angelic light from within. It is the opening out of a clear, conscious, sentient awareness into which we create ourselves and our world anew. Just like the initial pattern of creation governed by the word of the divine being, Ein Sof. Be aware of the layers through which humanity has traversed, and that the ancient layers are not redundant, but the foundations that lift the very state we may rise into. Thus the indigenous animist rainbow serpent supports the artistic cultivators of the people of the goddess, Eve, who in turn supports Adam, humanity, and its many gods as it strives to rise in technological and socially engineered greatness. The three stages of humanity in its transfiguration mirror the letters in the primal name of God before the creation, the Emesh. Aleph, the people of the Serpent and pure spirit of nature's chaos. Mem, the cultivators of the goddess who create with the waters of life. And Shin, the fires of humanity who cleanse the world by fire and recreate it anew with light and energy. Place all three together and we start to understand what humanity really is. This final stage has been achieved again and again by certain civilizations through the ages, which have since diffused or fallen into the dust of the earth. In this chain of growth, humanity achieves its messianic potential and embodies unity of being, harmony, love, order, and peace. Humanity in its transfiguration mirrors the letters in the primal name of God before the creation. Tikkunim is as much a part of the human collective as a path within the individual's soul, ever striving towards the peace and perfection of the messianic resolve, that is, the refinement towards a truly developed and refined humanity. Much work is needed to be done, but it all begins with the opening of a clear space and the casting of one's intentions into it, tearing the fabric of the old construct, and by learning to give, reconstructing the soul in the light of new consciousness.